Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Stony Acres Gardening. Welcome to my channel. So it is early October and we have been super busy. We've got apples coming off the tree like crazy. We still have tomatoes that are producing really well. The sweet potatoes are ready. The fall garden is thriving and it's time to get the cold frames out and the hoop houses on. And I just have not had time to get out and film a video. And then on top of that, we've got this fun indoor gardening event that we're going to be doing a little bit later on in the month that I've been preparing for. And so I've just been swamped and haven't been able to do a new video for you. So I thought today that I would do something a little bit different. It's garlic season. It's time for us to actually be getting our garlic planted. So we need to get it planted this fall. And so I thought, why not take some of the videos that I have done over the past year or two about garlic and put them all together and create a garlic growing master course for you. So what I've done is I've got 3 videos for you. We've got a video on planting garlic in the fall, why you should be doing it in the fall and how to plant. Then I've got a video about what you should be doing in the spring. So early in the spring when your garlic starts to sprout, what are the things that you need to be doing to be successful then? And then I've got a video that teaches you when to harvest garlic, how to harvest it, how to cure it, and store it for the winter. So this will kind of be a garlic growing master course for you. It's about a half an hour long, and hopefully this will be something that will be very beneficial to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and turn the time over to myself, and I'll teach you about growing garlic. We're going to talk today about planting garlic, and I get the question all the time, when should I be planting my garlic? Is it too late to plant? Lots of different questions. Unfortunately, most of the time, I get those questions in the spring. Spring is not the right time to plant garlic. Now, you can plant garlic in the spring, but you won't get nearly as good of a crop if you plant in the spring versus planting in the fall. And the reason why we want to plant in the fall is that gives a long time for these cloves to get established and growing before the warm weather shows up in the spring and really kind of gets things moving forward. And so it is way better. You're going to get much bigger, healthier, happier plants if you plant them in the fall. Okay, so when in the fall is the next question that I get. You want to wait until it really starts to cool off. So I say that you should wait at least 2 weeks after your first frost. So for example, our first frost is usually October 1st. I don't even start thinking about planting my garlic until October 15th. And you really have a pretty broad range after that to plant. As long as your ground hasn't frozen, you're okay to plant. So for most of us that live in the Northern Hemisphere, planting time for garlic is going to be sometime in October or November. Even those of you that live in the really warm areas are probably going to be thinking about planting your garlic in November, early December. The key is you want to get it in while it's cool. That gives them a chance to get established and to grow well. They also like to have that cooling off period. Like a lot of other bulbs, they like to have that cooling off period. It really helps them to grow better. Okay, the next thing that I want you to do is I want you to get your beds ready. So I don't want you to just go out and throw the garlic in the ground. I actually want you to take some time to actually do a little prep work in your garden first. And the thing that I really want you to do is I want you to get some compost in that bed. Garlic is really going to appreciate the extra nutrients and organic material that compost will bring to the party. Okay, so I like to get my beds ready, and then I like to add 2 or 3 inches of compost and then kind of just stir it in to the top, 2 to 4 inches of soil in my garden bed. So kind of just mix that in. That is really going to help your garlic to do better during the growing season if you have amended your soil with some compost first. Now, if you really feel like you need it, you could also do some fertilizing at planting time. So I would prefer that you use an organic fertilizer. Look at the directions on the package and, put the fertilizer in based on the directions on whatever package you're using, but you could throw in some organic fertilizer as well if you wanted to, if you feel like you need it. Now, I put compost in my beds every year, and I feel like that my garlic does fantastic without fertilizer, and so I usually don't fertilize my garlic, especially in the fall when I first plant it. But that is definitely an option if you feel like that's something that your garden needs. Okay. Next, we need to select some of the biggest and best bulbs to plant. Okay, so let me I'm going to come up here closer to the camera and hopefully we can get it to focus. So this is our bulb, and I'm going to pull off a few cloves here, okay? And you want to choose, and this variety, for this variety, this is a nice big clove, okay? Some varieties are going to be a lot bigger, but for this particular variety, this is a nice clove. And we want to plant with the pointy side up and the flat side down. So if you look really close, let's see again if we can get this to focus. See how that's the flat side there? That flat side is where the roots are. And we want the flat side down, we want the pointy side up. That's how we're going to plant, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. It is a big deal if you mess that up. You will still get a harvest, but the plant has to do this little curlicue to get things up. So you need to make sure that you plant it that right way. Flat side down, pointy side up, okay? And then it's really simple to actually get the garlic planted. So let me kind of do a cutaway here of us planting our garlic last year. It doesn't need to be very deep. Couple of inches is all you need to get it in. If your soil is soft enough, ours has a little bit of clay in it, and so we can't really press them in, but if you have soft enough soil, you can actually just press those cloves right into the ground. But you're just going to put them in a couple inches deep, cover them up just a little bit. That's all that it takes. Get those guys in there and away you go. Now spacing, let's talk about spacing. I'm all for intense planting. I like to get things planted as close as I can, but you also need to still respect that garlic plants need a little bit of space. So I have found that a really good spacing is about 4 inches. So within the row, I space them 4 inches apart, and then each row is 4 inches apart. That gives each individual plant about a 4 square inch space to grow in, and that seems to do really well. Saves space, still gives you a good productive plant. So 4 inches, great spacing, seems to work really well. That's the spacing we've used for years and years and years, and it does just really, really super well, okay? All right, then the last thing that I want you to do once you finish planting is I want you to mulch that bed. So you can choose a whole bunch of different types of mulches. You could use straw, you could use grass clippings. I really like to use leaves as my mulch. And so we get a lot of leaves down on the lawn. I run over them with a lawnmower, that kind of shreds them up, and then I will just put a nice thick layer, 3 or so inches of leaves on top of my garlic bed. That's going to keep the bed warmer during the winter, and then it's going to just offer a lot of good benefits in the spring. I don't clear it off, I just leave the mulch on. The garlic's going to come up through the mulch and going to be just fine. So that mulch is going to help in the spring with growing. It's going to keep your water demands down, and it's going to help to keep those plants protected and over the winter. And so it's a great option to put some type of mulch down as well, okay? Now let's talk about the seeds and where we get the seeds from. There's 4 options that you have for getting garlic seed to plant. And when I say seed, it's actually you're just planting garlic cloves, right? So first option is to order it online. There's a bunch of different sellers out there that sell garlic online. M.I. Gardner is one that comes to mind to me. Luke, he's a big YouTuber. You guys have probably seen him around. They offer a lot of different varieties of hardneck and softneck garlic, so you could get them from some type of online seller. The next option would be to choose some garlic from a farmer's market. So that's what we did originally, is we chose a garlic from a local farmer. And that is a great way to do it because you know that it's already locally adapted. You can talk to the farmer about the variety, get a little information, and it should grow really, really well. And that's a very good and also inexpensive way to get your garlic started, because sometimes those online sellers can be a little bit on the pricey side when it comes to garlic. So a great way to take care of that is to buy it from a local farmer's market. Then you can do the third method, which is save your own seed. So we originally bought this variety of garlic. Don't know the name, but it's a soft neck variety that we bought from a local farmer at a farmer's market 12 years ago, okay? We've never had to buy seed since, because as what we do is we just go through and we look at these bulbs and we'll choose the best, biggest, healthiest looking cloves off of our garlic, and we'll pull out, we usually plant, 30 to 40 plants a year. So we'll pull off that many cloves and plant our own garlic. And the nice thing about garlic is it very quickly adapts to local conditions. So if you've got a variety that you know is already going to grow well, it will very quickly adapt to your garden within just a couple of years if you do that very thing. Choose the biggest, healthiest, best looking bulbs or cloves within the bulb, plant those, and then if you do that year after year, you'll very quickly get a locally adapted to your own garden variety of garlic that will do really, really well for years and years. Like I say, we haven't bought garlic seed for 12 years since that first season that we bought garlic from the farmer's market. So that is a great way to do it. Now, none of those options work out for you. There is one other option. You can buy garlic from the grocery store and plant it, but that's kind of a crapshoot. And the reason why is because, number one, you have no idea what variety you're getting. You don't know if it's locally adapted, if it was grown in a super warm environment. You just don't know. You have no way of knowing that. Number two, if it's not an organic variety, it may have been treated so that it doesn't sprout. And so that will really bring your germination rates down and affect you that way. And then you don't know if you're bringing any disease into your garden as well. So I will say I know a lot of people who have successfully grown garlic from grocery store stock, okay? But that's my last choice of all the different options to getting seed. That's the one that I would choose last, is actually getting it from a grocery store. All right, so that's it. That's how you grow your own garlic and get it planted in the fall. Fall, again, is perfect time to be planting it. And remember, as long as your ground hasn't frozen, it's not too late, okay? One year I planted on December 1st. Now, admittedly, that was a very mild fall, but we're usually planting mid-November, early November, somewhere around there. As long as that ground hasn't frozen, it's not too late. You can get your garlic planted. So get out there and get some garlic planted. Super easy, great plant to grow, carefree, one of the best plants for gardeners to get going out in your garden. And the other nice thing is you can grow enough that you'd hardly ever have to buy it from the grocery store. So perfect plant for the garden. It's spring, and garlic is one of my favorite crops this time of year because it's one of the very first crops up. I love the fact that we plant it in the fall. We see it coming up so early in the spring, but it's important that we do a few things now in the early spring to make sure that we have a great crop this summer. So I've got 4 tips for you today to help you have a great garlic harvest. Garlic is a pretty carefree crop. There's not a ton that you have to do. You plant it in the fall, you harvest it in the middle of the next summer. But there are a few things that you can do now in the springtime that are going to help assure that you have a great crop this summer. The first of those tips is these guys, okay? Garlic is very shallow rooted. The roots are all right here up at the top of the plant. They don't delve very deep, and so garlic does not compete well with weeds. So the very first thing that you need to do in the spring is make sure that you get your bed weeded. I always say that you should weed early and weed often, meaning you need to get after these weeds when they're little like this. We don't want big weeds that have a good root system. That is going to disturb the roots of our garlic and compete with them. So make sure that you are constantly checking your garlic, get rid of any weeds that you might have. That way you're not going to have to worry about competition with your garlic. One other thing that you should make sure you do is to weed by hand. We don't want to be using a cultivator or any kind of tool around your garlic. Again, because it's so shallowly rooted, we want to make sure that we are staying away from those roots and doing everything we can to protect the root base of these plants. Next on the list is fertilizer. So garlic is one of the few crops that I actually feel like I ought to fertilize. Garlic is a big feeder. It likes a lot of nitrogen. We want to get that good, healthy, leafy top growth, and so it's a good idea to give your garlic a little bit of fertilizer here in the springtime. So I like to do it twice. We want to do it once about somewhere between 4 weeks to 2 weeks before our last frost date, and then we'll do it again 4 weeks after that. So I'm 4 weeks away from my last frost date right now, and so we're going to go ahead and get these guys fertilized. What I've done is I've mixed up a little bit of fish emulsion. I've got about 2 gallons here. mixed it up at full strength. The fish emulsion that I use is a 5-1-1, so highest in nitrogen, and we are going to just go ahead and give this bed a really good soak. Make sure that we soak it in really well with this fertilizer, and that is going to give us our first boost. Then, about 4 weeks later, we want to do the exact same thing. High nitrogen fertilizer, liquid is great, make sure it's organic, and give those plants another boost. That's it. 2 fertilizers, one roughly 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost date, and then 1 4 weeks after that. That should all the fertilizer that you will need for your garlic. After we start getting that top growth going and doing really well, we don't want to mess around adding additional fertilizer, because then that could give us too much top growth, which we don't want. So just those 2 is all you need. Next on the list is some mulch. So again, because our garlic is so shallowly rooted, it does not like to get dried out. Garlic doesn't do well with drought conditions, and so we want to make sure that we keep this soil evenly moist. And so once I've fertilized, I'm going to put down some mulch. So you've got a bunch of different options here for mulch. You want to get a good 2 or 3 inch layer going. You can use things like grass clippings, you could use straw, you could use chopped up leaves. In my case, I'm going to be using some compost. This bed got a little bit of compost when we planted it in the fall, but I like to use compost as a mulch. So we're just going to put down a solid 2 or 3 inch layer of compost throughout this bed. That is going to keep the moisture down, it's going to keep the weeds down, and eventually that compost will break down and nourish the soil as well. So it does all kinds of good things. That's why I like to put down just some compost as my summertime mulch here in my garlic bed. That should really help to keep that soil moisture even and help those plants just to thrive. Last on our list is watering. So if you're anything like me, in the springtime, I tend to probably rely a little bit too much on the weather to water my garden. I like to, use the rain as much as I can, but you do need to make sure that as you are letting your garlic mature, that you don't let it go too long without water. So if you have a dry spell in the spring where you have, a week or more without water, then you need to consider coming out and getting some water on this crop. Again, we want to keep a nice, even moisture, make sure that it always has that water resource available. We don't want it soaking wet all the time, but if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of rains in the springtime, or if you just happen to be having a dry spring, you may need to come out and give this bed a little additional water, maybe that you might not be thinking about early in the spring, just to make sure that it keeps that even. Of course, as we get closer to summer, you're going to want to put your regular irrigation system in and take care of it that way, but just make sure that you don't let it get too dry. So those are your 4 tips for what you should be doing this spring to make sure that your garlic has a great harvest come summer. So just to recap, we want to make sure we keep the weeds down. You want to fertilize a couple of different times, about 4 weeks apart. We want to make sure that we get some mulch down on this bed, and we want to make sure that we keep that watering nice and even during the spring. That's going to give you a great crop of garlic this summer. Today we are going to be talking about when and how to harvest garlic, and I'm excited about this one because this is the first major harvest for the season from our garden. Our garlic is ready to be pulled out and it's time to do it, and so I'm excited about this video. Garlic. When I first started growing garlic, I was a little confused as to when you should harvest it, and there's a lot of different information out there. We didn't have YouTube back when I was learning this, and so I kind of fumbled through and found my own process that seems to be working really well for us. In fact, we just finished using the last of last year's garlic about 8 weeks ago. And so we had our garlic last in storage for about 10 months this year, which is really good. So I feel like my method's working, so hopefully it'll work out for you guys as well. So let me give you a couple of best practices first. So if possible, you should try and not water your plants for about 7 days before you harvest. Now, that's an if possible. This year for me, it's not possible because my garlic happens to be in the rotation. It's sitting in the middle of the bed. So I've got onions over here, I've got potatoes back here. Those need to be watered. And so the garlic, was watered about 4 days ago. So I'm waiting till the very last minute and I'm trying to do my best. But Best practice about 7 days, but do your best, because the thing you don't want to do is leave your garlic in too long waiting for that 7-day, of dry period. So do your best to harvest it when it's a little bit drier. As what that does is it helps our bulbs to dry out and cure a little bit quicker. But again, it's not the end of the world if you don't get those 7 days in, okay? All right, so let's talk about how we know when to harvest our garlic. And this is a bulb that I just harvested a few minutes ago. And best way to know is when the bottom 4 or 5 leaves have dried up. And unfortunately, when I was harvesting this one, a couple of the leaves actually fell right off, but you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 of the bottom leaves. About 50% of the total foliage has dried up, and is that means that we're ready to go. As what we want is we want some dried outside, but we still want things to be nice and tight inside, okay? So about 50%, 4 or 5 of these leaves dried up is when you harvest, okay? And it should happen pretty much to the entire bed of whatever variety that you're working with. And so that's when we should be getting it done. Now, a couple of other best practices for you. Number one, we don't want to be pulling these bulbs out of the ground, okay? We want to do everything that we can to protect this bulb and the cloves that are inside so that everything stays tight and protected in here in this part of it. So we don't want to be yanking these guys out of the ground. That's going to put stress. It's going to cause these to separate. We don't want that to happen. So instead, you need to dig them out. And so you're going to use something like a little spade, or if you're doing a big bed like I'm going to be doing, you can use a digging fork. And you want to get back away from the plants so that you're not accidentally cutting into the bulbs, and you pry that up and loosen them up before you pull them out so that we're not putting stress on those bulbs, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and harvest this little bed of garlic, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about what we need to do to dry and cure it for storage. Okay, so I am super happy with this harvest. We've got about 35 total plants here. Everything looks really good. The bulk of the plants are really nice, big, tight cloves, so I'm super happy. Good year to film a video, I guess. One thing that I did want to mention is now we have this little space. It's about a 4 by 4 foot space that's empty, okay? We want to make sure that we get this filled in, and so there are plenty of things that you can be doing to fill this space in. And I just did a video last week. You can click on it right there that will tell you some of the things that you can be planting in an empty space like this. We are going to be putting in some beans here. So we're going to put some bush beans in so that we have a nice fall harvest of bush beans. So now let's go over and we'll talk about drying these out. Okay guys, before we actually lay the garlic out here, I wanted to talk really quick about what I've got happening here. There's a million different ways to dry your garlic. The overall idea for drying and curing your garlic is to make sure that there's plenty of air circulation, okay? So the way I've accomplished that is I built this little screen. It's been around for a long time. I use it for all kinds of things. I dry my garlic, my onions, my popcorn on it. I also use it to sift compost. So it's just a 4 by 4 frame with some chicken wire on it that gets it up so that the garlic is not on the ground. And I usually will just set it across a couple of sawhorses like this, and then we put it in the garage. So it won't be outside, it will ultimately end up in the garage, but it's hard to film in the garage. So let me get the garlic. And number one, man, this is amazing, it smells delicious. So it basically is what we want to do is just get this garlic spread out so that it's fairly separated. If you've got, like here, I've still got some clumps. We want to make sure we get that dirt off as best we can. You won't be perfect, but we're going to try and get the dirt out of the roots. And then we're just going to spread this garlic out so that it's hopefully not touching. And again, that's what's kind of nice about this screen, is we can kind of set it all out here like this. And then we're going to let it sit for about 3 weeks. And is what's going to happen over that 3-week period is these tops are going to dry completely. The roots are going to dry off. And once these tops have completely dried back and we've got kind of a nice crispy, papery feel to them, then we simply cut the roots off and we cut the top off, and then we store them in some type of mesh bag. Now, if you have a soft neck variety like mine and you would like to braid it, that's fine. You can braid it as well. But here's the key to getting a good long-lasting storage on your garlic. It needs to have air circulation, so if you're going to store it in a bag, it needs to be a mesh bag, and it needs to be somewhere cool and dark. And that is not your kitchen, which is why we don't braid our garlic, because then the temptation is to hang it up somewhere because it looks so cool, and I totally understand that. It looks really cool. If you think you're going to use your garlic up in 3 or 4 months, then that's fine. You can hang it in your kitchen. But if you want long storing garlic like we do, we want this to be able to last all the way through the winter, then it needs to be somewhere cool and dark. So our garlic starts out in a dark room in our basement where it's cool, and then once the fall weather arrives and our garage has cooled off, we'll actually take the bag and hang it out in the garage. Temperatures in our garage stay just above freezing all winter long, and so that is a great place. Again, cool and dark will make for the long storage, okay? And then use it up. Make sure that you save some of your biggest and best cloves to plant for next year, and you'll have your own crop, okay? Now, I did do a little bit more extensive curing and storing onion post years ago, like years and years ago. If you want to check that one out, this is like one of my first videos. It was like number 10 on the list. You can click on that right there and go see me 6 years ago. But this is garlic, and it's that simple. Harvest when about 50% of the leaves are dried off. Let them sit for about 3 weeks to cure in a nice, dark, airy area, and you are good to go, okay? All right, if you have any questions, please make sure you let me know, and I will answer those in the comment section down below. And while I've got you, make sure that you go check out the Gardening Academy. So the Gardening Academy is our monthly membership service. It's a great way to support us here on the Stoney Acres channel. And we have just an amazing lineup of courses and monthly topics and just lots of great stuff. We do a Q&A every month that's specific for the members. Just a great place to be, fairly inexpensive. There's a free trial offer that we're doing right now. You can click on the link down in the description for a 14-day free trial. I will warn you, more than half of the people that try the free trial end up staying, okay, because it's that good. I love my Gardening Academy members, and I really try to treat you guys right, and so that's a great way to support us here at Stoney Acres. I'd love it if you go check it out and try that free trial out so that you can become a full-time member. Okay, thanks guys, this has been a great one. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click that notification bell so you get notice every time I release new videos. And go over and follow us on Instagram as well, okay? All right, that's it for this week. Everybody have a fantastic week. Happy gardening.